Shalom and a warm welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today we'll be discussing the shocking hypocrisy against the Jewish communities living in the biblical heartland of Israel, known as Judea and Samaria. Warm welcome to the program, and today's special guest is all the way from Israel, from the biblical heartland of Israel known as Judea and Samaria, Sondra Baras, who's the director of the Christian Friends of the Israeli Communities. Sondra, after 4 years, it's great to see you back in our studios, back sharing us the wonderful news about your very special communities living in Judea and Samaria. So if you just want to tell us how you are, and it's great to have you on the program.
Well, it's great to be here, and really it is 4 years since I've been here. I was here in 2019. I was supposed to come in 2020, but then COVID hit and nobody was going anywhere. So it is wonderful to be back here and visit old friends and just bring the word from Judea and Samaria.
Well, that's very special in itself, because back in 2019 had the opportunity to visit Samaria, or known as the Shomron. And all I can describe that area is second to Jerusalem. And if you haven't visited Judea and Samaria, then it feels like you haven't actually visited Israel itself. So such a missing component. And Shiloh is such an incredible place, the resting home of the Ark of the Covenant, all that biblical history, the beautiful surrounding hills and everything else. So just give us a little bit of an update on your organization, which is the Christian Friends of Israeli Communities, because you are very much a special community. You are pioneers, and you are living in that land in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. It's just fabulous.
Well, you know, you said it's second to Jerusalem, but I'm going to show you why it's really first. Because right near where I live, just east of where I live, is a spot that I love to take people to. It's called the Three Seas Outlook. You stand up on this mountain. It's like east of the community of Tamar, and you see Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal, the Oak of Moreh. You go down, you look down there to the east, and you see the Jordan Valley. You see the area where the nation of Israel crossed into the land to begin with. But right there, two things happened. God promised the land to Abraham at the Oak of Moreh, and at Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, the children of Israel entered into a covenant with God for the first time in the land of Israel. That cements the relationship between the God of Israel, the people of Israel, and the land of Israel. So anyone who denies the Jewish right to the land of Israel, just take them there. Just pull out scripture, just start reading, you know, and there it is. It's like black on white. This land belongs to the Jewish people. Now, Jerusalem is holy, and I'm not doubting Jerusalem by any means, but if you really want to understand how the relationship began between the Jewish people and the land of Israel, you need to come to Samaria.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you, Sondra, on that point. But also, it's such a shame that we see there are so many tours to Israel, and you'll be talking about your tour coming up at the end of the program, but so many tours to Israel, and yet they don't go to Judea and Samaria, which they look at the kind of the security considerations and decide not to go, which I think is a massive shame, because it's not only is it stunningly beautiful, but its biblical content it's huge.
Well, you know, the organization that I actually founded, and I've been heading up for now 25 years, the whole purpose is to reach out to Christians from all over the world and enable them to connect in a real intimate way with Judea and Samaria. And that begins with a visit. So one of the things that we've done all these years, for tour groups coming from anywhere in the world, they come on their standard tour, they do Jerusalem, they do the Galilee, and we want them to come in and see that real biblical heartland. Just contact us. And we do this for tour groups, we do this for individuals. In fact, I may be crazy for doing this, but I'm going to say to everybody watching us today, you want to come? Call me. Send me an email. You know, I'll host you in my home, in my office. I want you, every single person here, everyone out there, I want you to come and see and feel it for yourselves. And so that's part of what we're doing. We're bringing people out, we're educating them as to why we're there from a biblical point of view, from a political point of view, historical, legal, the works. And we're also giving Christians the opportunity to stand with us and to partner with us to help settle the land, which is what we're doing.
Absolutely, and you mean that, don't you? Because within British culture, when you say an invite like that, they don't take it seriously. So literally,
I mean it.
Sondra means it. And Sondra, what is it like to live, work, and raise a family in Judea and Samaria?
Well, you know what? I started this a long time ago, and now I have grandchildren who live in Judea and Samaria. But when we first moved to Samaria, we had 3 small children. And my youngest at the time was a baby. I had 2 more children after that. And, you know, it was a very small community. Everybody knew everybody. And like when my son was born, the first son after I moved there, my son was born. So it's a boy, and we have a circumcision ceremony. So what do? We were living in a community. We had no public buildings. We prayed. Our services were in bomb shelters because we hadn't yet been able to build buildings at that point. You know, we had homes and whatever. What do? You open up a bunch of tables in the middle of the road, okay? You put a tablecloth on it, okay? Everybody comes and brings a bowl of something, a casserole, a salad, some cake, right? And there you have the party. And this is how we did it. So going back then, it was a real experience. We were not just neighbors, we were family. And we were coming to a place that everyone all over the world was saying, you don't belong there. And very shortly after I moved there, already we were having Arab terrorism, and we would drive down to the city to pick up some things or take the kids out. And we were really nervous. And it happened to us a few times. The stones get thrown at us, even Molotov cocktails. So that's how it all began. And the amazing thing is that we didn't give up. I don't know what it is. You know, I remember at one time visiting with relatives in the States, and they said to me, how do you do this? How do you get in the car and leave and know something really bad could happen to you? And I said, you know what? I have developed this ability, and it's not unique to me. I think we all develop this feeling that we're here because this is what God wants us to be doing. And if that rock or that bullet has my name on it, so be it. Kind of this surrendering totally to God's protection and just moving. And that's, it sounds nuts, okay? But that is an incredibly liberating feeling. You just do. And thank God, God blessed our efforts. So today, my little community is a large town, growing every day. 2 of my children, grown with families, have moved back to the community. And we're now more than 500,000 Jews living in Judea and Samaria.
That's incredible, absolutely incredible, and it just shows you don't live in fear, is the lesson there. Fear of God, yes, but don't live in fear. Sondra, your organisation, Christian Friends of Israeli Communities, why is it so important that we know that you are precious people, you are brave, courageous pioneers that are actually built these towns and cities in Judea and Samaria in fulfilment of biblical prophecy. But can you share with us why it's important to engage and have that Christian support?
Well, I think it's important both for Jews and for Christians. For me, as a Jew, I discovered Christian support because I was advocating for the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria and hitting brick walls everywhere. Even amongst some very liberal Jews living in the United States and Europe, a lot of suspicion. At the time, there was also a lot of suspicion even among many Israelis, like, what are you doing there? And, it's just provoking terrorism and all these crazy kind of accusations, not to mention the media. So I was looking for allies and friends anywhere I could find them, and happened upon Christians. So at that point, for me, it was like, oh, allies. These are people that understand what I'm talking about. The conversation began, and it was a very productive and very exciting conversation, and it just grew. So that's good for us, and it's good for Israel. And it's good that we have friends all over the world who are raising their voices in their own countries, so that even when a particular government is saying, oh, get rid of those settlements, there's someone in that country who is saying, no, 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 we don't agree with that. And that voice is very important, that it is heard and is articulated. But I think from a Christian point of view, what I've come to learn and understand from my Christian friends is that it is vitally important for Christians, because first of all, many Christians don't realize how important Israel is to the Christian faith. And when Christians are trying to understand what the Bible means for them as Christians, what is prophecy? Is it just somebody spoke some words, or is it really something that is going to be unfolding in the future? And what is that future? Is that some utopian vision in, I don't know, thousands of years from now? Or is it now? And I think Jews and Christians can both agree that so much of the prophecies of the restoration of Israel is happening before our very eyes. And when Christians get involved in what we're doing, first of all, they're coming to understand biblical prophecy. It is really happening. There is a real Israel. There is a real relationship between God and Israel. This has not been replaced. And I think it helps Christians better understand their Bible and their vision of what God is doing just by being there. And then we take them one extra step. And we say, you know what? Don't just look at it as if you're seeing a movie. Okay, let's see what God's doing. We're watching the screen. Be part of that movie. You too can be an actor in the film. And that's what we're offering. Because when people come and they get involved and they host meetings and they donate financially to particular needs in the communities, they are literally taking part in the fulfillment of prophecy.
Incredible. It reminds me of a story, actually, because I used to film a program called the European Report in the European Parliament, and one of our guests on was an elderly Italian MEP, member of the European Parliament. He was also one of the most prominent MEPs in the European Parliament, and he was the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee in the European Parliament. He wanted to know what all the fuss was about with the Jewish settlers in Judea and Samaria. So with great protest, he decided to see that your communities for himself, came back and became the biggest advocate for the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria in the European Parliament, all because of your wonderful hospitality and what he saw with his own eyes. So, yeah, I think there's a
That's
there's
amazing.
There's a lesson there. So let's have a look at the incredible organisation and the incredible work being carried out by Christian friends of Israeli communities in the biblical heartland of Israel, known as Judea and Samaria.
After centuries of exile and dispersion, the people of Israel have returned to the biblical heartland, our ancestral homeland, just as God promised.
Even if your outcasts are at the ends of the world, from there the Lord your God will gather you. He will bring you to the land that your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it.
We have settled this land in fulfillment of prophecy, but we are also building a good and kind society where we reach out to our neighbors.
My wife and I were both Holocaust survivors, and we were married for 69 years. She passed away 3 years ago. I live alone.
Losing a spouse is an earth-shattering experience for our seniors. Loneliness, depression, this is where we must step in. At the Seniors Club, they connect to people, they smile, they laugh, they come alive.
A family in financial crisis is a family that cannot function. We help them find jobs and work with them to become better parents. But first, we have to make sure they have food.
Okay, guys, we have to pack 600 food packages for tonight, so the family will have food for the holidays.
And that's where CFOIC Heartland has made all the difference.
CFOIC has played a vital role in turning a dream of redemption into a reality.
We are surrounded by hostile Arabs who attack us at every opportunity. The Israeli army has our backs, but they can't be everywhere at once. volunteer rapid responders are filling in the gap, protecting the people of Judea and Samaria.
God has blessed our efforts, and so have you, our Christian friends.
And that just gives you a little bit of insight into the excellent work being carried out by Sondra and a team in promoting the wonderful communities living in Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel. I mean, I love what you do, because you guys are just pioneers. What is it like to be a pioneer, though? Because you know, I feel like I'm a little bit of a pioneer with this program for the last 10 years or so, and then you become a settler, and then, you know, and then people get to know what you're doing. But what was it like to be, because I know that you had a lovely life in the United States, you could have earned a lot more money, but you're actually fulfilling those biblical dreams of your ancestors by living in the Shomron. Sondra.
Well, you know, yeah, I grew up in the United States, but from a very young age, probably from like 12 or 13 years old, I knew that I was going to be living in Israel. I grew up in a home that was very Jewish, and studied Bible from a very, very young age, and had a very strong of identification with that. You know, I would imagine when a Christian reads the story of Abraham, for example, coming to the land and God saying, I'll give this land to your children. So it's a nice story. For me, it's my great-great-grandfather, you know, and when God says, I'll give this land to your children, well, that's me, you know. So then, as I gained an understanding of what God has been doing in Israel in my lifetime, I realized I, as a faithful, God-fearing Jew, have no business staying in America. When God said he'd give us the land, he said he'd restore the land to us. He has done that, unlike some of my ancestors who may have had to, you know, walk across Europe or Russia to get to Israel and endure unbelievable hardships. All I needed to do was call up the Jewish agency and say, I want to move to Israel, and they give me a plane ticket, one way. But, you know, that's what we did. So it was really, that sense, it was a no-brainer. Yes, I definitely was making a lot more money in America, but it was a very short time. You know, we finished our studies, we worked a little bit, and we moved, and we were quite young, and never looked back. I don't know, I never really felt like I was a pioneer. I just felt like I was doing something that was important. And that's also one of the things I remember feeling when I would encounter old friends that were in the States, Jews like me, who had not made aliyah, or had not yet made aliyah. And I remember thinking, they're so wrapped up in their lives, that are their career, or they get really wrapped up about if they're a lawyer, oh, what deal have they done? Or if they're a doctor, what big surgery have they now performed? And they're all wrapped up in this stuff. And then I'm thinking, well, I may not have done anything extraordinary, but like, I really feel I'm in the epicenter of God's work.
Absolutely.
in the world. And it sounds absurd, but that's exactly how I felt. So I never felt like a pioneer. I just felt like I was privileged to be in the center of it all.
Amazing. So let's go and see the center of it all now, and let's have a look at one of the beautiful communities in Judea and Samaria. If you've never been, take a look.
CFOIC Heartland welcomes you to our communities, where the people of Israel have returned to Judea and Samaria in fulfillment of prophecy. It was 1968, and the Six-Day War was still a fresh memory. Young religious pioneers did what no one else dreamed of doing, settling the desert expanse of the Jordan Valley. The heat was unbearable, and water was scarce, but they persevered, and they created miraculous agriculture, which still thrives today in the desert landscape. today, those original pioneers enjoy their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren living with them in Mecholah, a multi-generational success story.
And that was a bit of an insight into one of the Jewish communities in the Jordan Valley in the north of Israel. Looks absolutely stunning. What's so interesting, isn't it, about your communities is that Israel reached 75 years old. It's an amazing achievement for the nation of Israel. But one thing we know that Israel's population is growing, so nearly just over 9 million people. And of course, the majority of the Israelis live in kind of around the Tel Aviv area, Netanya, that area, Herzliya, which is very crowded. So you can only really have an apartment. But where you're living in your communities, you have big houses, you have gardens. Just share with us what life is like, an ordinary day in the life of one of your communities.
Well, it's interesting what you say about houses and gardens, because that's changing now. I live in a nice house with a garden. But today, because so many people have also moved into Judea and Samaria, well, it's clearly not crowded the way it is along the coast. You can't build any more private houses. It's all 2- and 3-family homes and apartments and that kind of thing. But yeah, no question, we have much more space like that. Now, I'll tell you about my life, okay? Because my life spans this multi-generational type of thing, which is so neat about what we're doing. So the original pioneers moved into the communities mostly in the 80s. You know, that was the heyday. A few started in the late 70s, but really the heyday of the expansion and the establishment of these communities were in the 80s. So when we moved there, people were for the most part in their 20s and 30s. A few people maybe, the grandpas, you know, were like in their 40s or something like that. So today there's a mass of people who are now middle-aged and older, and we are grandparents, and our children have moved back, and our grandchildren are there. So for me, I'm going to work, my husband and I are going to work, we have friends who have already retired. There are senior citizen centers all over the place that has a whole host of activities for people that are now retired. Classes, Bible study, all kinds of stuff. Some of the communities have swimming pools or exercise programs or all kinds of stuff like that. And then you have the next generation working very hard, daycare centers. My grandchildren are all in daycare centers from the time they're about 5-6 months old, whenever their mothers decide to go back to work. And then the daycare centers. And then, you know, my daughters-in-law, my kids, they all go to work. They come back, they fetch the kids from the daycare center. And then, of course, I get called, you know, Safta, that's grandma, you know, I'm going to be late, you know, come back from work. Can you pick up the kids from the daycare today? So, you know, that's also part of my life. And so we really now have such a spread of ages and experiences in these communities, from the elderly down to the babies, and everything in between. And if I look at that, I say, wow, this is our success.
It's amazing. That is incredible. And Sondra, there seems to be a shift in Israeli public opinion towards your communities, which I'm sure you actually welcome it, because before too long, the Israeli left have been dominating the arguments by saying that your communities are the obstacle to peace. They're the reasons why we don't have peace with the Palestinians now. If you just pack up and go home, there'll be peace. We know that that's a pack of lies. But share with us how, for example, there has been a big shift in Israeli public opinion towards your communities in the biblical heartland of Israel.
Well, I think what happened is that you know, back in the 90s, the Israeli government that was at the time dominated by the left entered into a number of very deadly experiments beginning with the Oslo process in '93. That continued through the '90s, where Israel handed over chunks of Judea and Samaria and Gaza to the Palestinian Authority that created. And we had two very different opinions about that. There were those who said, oh, this is peace, this is, utopia, we're on our way. And there are those like me and the people who lived in Judea and Samaria that said, no, this is going to make it so much worse. Look at what the Arabs are saying. They're not saying, kumbaya, we want to live in peace. They're saying, great, we have more land, now we can start killing more Jews. And that's exactly what happened. And there was a gradual shift in public opinion as more and more people understood that the utopia that the left-wing politicians promised them was really a farce. And I would say the climax of all of that was in 2005 when Israel withdrew completely from the Gaza Strip and forcibly uprooted close to 10,000 people from their homes. And there was a lot of talk, even at that time, even after we'd gone through so much terrorism from Judea and Samaria. But this was not, oh no, now there's not going to be any Jews in sight. They're going to have their own strip of land. We're going to see a Palestinian state. It's going to be like Singapore. That's what everybody was saying. This wonderful little country, it's going to be an economic center. It'll be wonderful. And what did we get in return? Hamas took over, and ever since, as you know, artillery fire, missiles. And initially, the missiles and the rockets could only hit a few kilometers from Gaza. The last engagements, the missiles coming from Gaza came as far as my community, which is really far. You know, we had a couple of sirens, and luckily one missile landed literally at the edge of our community, but it's very ironic. It landed right near the neighboring Arab village. So, you know, they were killing their own, essentially. But it's that everyone woke up. So today there remains a tiny minority in Israel who says, no, we still have to give peace a chance, and this is the way. But most Israelis are very practical people, and they look at this and they say, this isn't going to work. And thank God there are Jewish communities and Jews living all over Judea and Samaria, holding on to the land, because where there are no Jews in Gaza anymore, look what's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I remember reading a report a few years ago saying that when Shimon Peres was the foreign secretary with Yitzhak Rabin, that it wasn't a peace process, it was a complete unilateral withdrawal from Judea and Samaria designed as a peace process, which, as we know, turned out absolutely disastrously as we head towards its 30th anniversary. But in the meantime, let's have a look at this excellent CBN News report that shows there seems to be a shift in opinion towards Jewish communities living in Judea and Samaria.
Thousands of years ago, the Bible called this area Judea and Samaria, part of the land God promised to the Jewish people. Since 1967, the international community has mainly referred to it as the occupied West Bank, where Palestinian Arabs want to establish a state. A recent survey of nearly 1,200 Jewish and Arab Israelis tried to measure how the two groups felt about this contentious real estate.
What we found in this poll that was focused on Judea and Samaria is that 70% of the Jewish society are very attached to Judea and Samaria, to our heritage and our history.
Reserve Brigadier General Amir Avivi heads the Israel Defense and Security Forum, which conducted the poll. Breaking down the numbers, it found a big divide. In addition to the historic connection among Jewish Israelis, 63% feel an emotional connection, 48% a religious connection. By contrast, among Arab Israelis, 37% feel an historical connection, 33% an emotional connection, 32% a religious connection. More than 2.7 million Palestinians and around 500,000 Jewish Israelis live in Judea and Samaria. That could be changing, as Avivi says nearly 50% of Israelis are thinking about moving to these communities, often described as the biblical heartland.
We have to understand that the area of Tel Aviv and its surroundings is already full. It's very, very expensive. It's like one big Manhattan. The young generation cannot afford buying houses in this region, so they're looking east towards the mountains because this is in the center of Israel. Much better weather, by the way.
Avivi's organization, made up of 16,000 members who served in Israeli security organizations, is dedicated to keeping the country's security a national priority.
We have been, in the last 3 years, doing extensive work with the young generation, explaining that Israel cannot exist without the Jordan Valley and Judea and Samaria. It's an area that is crucial, both spiritually, physically, and security-wise. And I think that this understanding is growing more and more in the Israeli society.
He says while the Jewish connection to this land goes back thousands of years, it's still alive today.
All our existence here is a biblical prophecy that has come to be. Every day is a miracle here. And I think that definitely the Jewish people here in Israel are getting really more and more attached and connected to really what it is to be a Jew in the land of Israel.
And he sees this land as the future of the Jewish people and their return, known as Zionism.
This is really where we should settle now and in the future. The spirit of Israel is being built up, and without a connection to Judea and Samaria, there is no real Zionism. Zionism is just an extension of Judaism. It's really understanding that this is the land of the people of Israel.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Quite amazing to see that Israeli attitudes on the whole are changing towards those precious Jewish communities in the Shomron, known as the Judea and Samaria. Watching that video just makes me think of something that is so encouraging, that the Israelis are realizing not only the spiritual importance and significance of Judea and Samaria, but its strategic significance as well. As you mentioned, that the disastrous land for peace deals that Israel's done over the last few decades have been disastrous. But isn't there a realization of Jewish communities across the world, and also from this country as well? There seems to be this mantra that they can't get their head over, that there has to be a two-state solution, that your communities are causing the problems, and if only you just went away, we'd have peace, and our members of parliament, our mainstream media would like us more, and there wouldn't be any anti-Semitism. It's a very simplistic view, but that's how so many of them see it. How do we convince the Jewish communities in the West to realize that your communities are such a valuable asset and essential to Israel's security, and that you're actually living in Israel's biblical inheritance? Because you can't say the same for that for Haifa or Tel Aviv.
Well, you know, this film that you showed was very interesting, but there was one element of it that they didn't really share, and I think that is part of the equation here. Jews in Israel are becoming far more traditional, biblically, religiously oriented. Okay? That doesn't mean everybody, all the Jews in Israel, are becoming Orthodox Jews. But if you look at a spectrum, many, many more that would have considered themselves secular a decade or a few decades ago, or that their parents would consider themselves more secular, they're today moving more towards a traditional worldview, which means that they're more eager to connect to their background, to their history, to their heritage. And there's no question that the Bible is their heritage, the land of Israel is their heritage, the artificial lines that were drawn in 1949 between Judea and Samaria and the rest of Israel are just that, artificial. And if you really want to explore who you are as a Jew and what is your connection to the land of Israel, you're going to automatically feel more connected to Judea and Samaria. And that is something that's going on independent of how you feel about Judea and Samaria. Jews are becoming more rooted in their Judaism, okay? Now what's happening is to Jews around the world, in many, especially in the United States, they're moving the opposite direction. Many Jews around the world are going further away from their Jewish traditions, are becoming more assimilated, are being influenced by more secular influences. And this is a topic of great conversation among Jews all over the world. How do we bring these two communities together so that the issue of Judea and Samaria is just a small little piece of that puzzle? The bigger issue is, how do we connect the Jews around the world with their Jewish heritage? Do they want to be connected with their Jewish heritage? And so that becomes really a bigger part of the problem. But for me, I am very optimistic, because what happens in Israel and to Israel is first and foremost something that the people of Israel need to decide. And I know that the people of Israel are that much more determined to hold on to Judea and Samaria for many other reasons. Now, with regard to the international community, with regard to how the Arabs see us and are there potentials for peace, just look at the Abraham Accords.
Absolutely.
We now have good relations with the United Arab Emirates, for example. I have many friends who have gone to Dubai for vacation. I have a very good friend who owns vineyards and has a winery in Samaria. She's gone there to sell wine.
Oh, that's amazing.
And she told me, number one, she was so warmly welcomed. They didn't care where she lived or where her wine was produced. And they don't care about the Palestinians. They want to do business. They are finally realizing, one second, there are Jews in Israel, they're people, like we're people. Why do we have to get all involved in all this hate stuff? Let's just sit down and do business. And that's what they're doing. In my own neighborhood, in Samaria and in Judea, more and more Arabs. On the one hand, yes, we have terrorism, and terrorism is growing, and it's being funded and influenced by Iran and all these horrible people out there. But at the same time, there are many Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria that are saying, you know what, these Jews aren't going anywhere. They're here to stay. So let's figure out how to get along with them. They have already recognized what the international community is too, I don't know, slow, stupid, whatever, to figure out. We're not going anywhere. 500,000 people who have settled in Judea and Samaria, and the number is just growing. We're not going anywhere. If you want real peace, we're going to have to figure out how to live together, not to get rid of us.
No, absolutely. And sadly, on the issue of terrorism, just share with us the challenges that your communities face, because literally you are on Israel's front line. You do have vulnerable communities. You're mixed up in those Palestinian Arab communities, and you've gone through kind of two horrific intifadas and could be heading for a third with all the trouble happening in Jenin. So just share with us the dark side of your communities and the dangers that you face.
Well, it seems like we're going back to some of the dark days of the Second Intifada, like what we were experiencing in 2000 to about 2006, and very, very upsetting when I see this happening. People going out in their cars, driving and being attacked. Of course, the most horrific example was a couple of months ago in the Jordan Valley, the Dee family, who are British citizens. And they live in Efrat in Judea. They were on their way north through the Jordan Valley to holiday in the Galilee, and they were in two different cars, and the mother and the two daughters that were in that car were deliberately murdered. A terrorist, an Arab terrorist, was driving a car, noticed that they were Jews, did a U-turn, went after them and shot them and made sure they were dead before he moved on. It's horrific. Why would they do such a thing? But absolutely, they're being fed such anger and such hatred. Just a couple of weeks ago, a week or two ago, actually, closer to where I am, there's a woman also with some of her daughters are traveling near Migdalim, which is a community in Samaria on the way east towards the Jordan Valley. Quite an isolated community. She's driving down this road at night, and all of a sudden is shot at. Now, what's amazing about it, this probably didn't hit your news because miraculously no one was hurt. She's, you know, when we saw a film of this, she is calling out to her daughters, are you okay? And together they just call out to God for protection. They recite the Shema prayer. Wow. And then they end up coming to a nearby base, you know, where there were some soldiers, and they pulled up, and the car was riddled with bullets, and not a single bullet hit them. Amazing. So this is just amazing. Now, why do I know Migdalim? Migdalim, that community where it is particularly isolated, and they're having trouble all the time. There are Arabs from nearby villages that are trying to infiltrate the community. In fact, one of the projects that we were involved with was to buy security cameras to help protect these communities. In fact, one of those cameras helped find the shooters on that car. But at the same time, there's an elderly Arab who has been from one of the neighboring villages, one of the same villages that where the terrorists are from, that has been working in the community of Migdalim for 20 or 30 years. They trust him with their lives. He is a wonderful guy, They really know that he is on their side. And if you ask him, so how do you justify, what's going on here? You're such a good person. You're working with us. We've known you for decades. We trust you. What's going on with these other people of the communities? He says they're crazy, they're young people, and they've been brought up wrong. That's what a Palestinian is saying.
Amazing, but how has your community reacted to the horrendous murder in cold blood of this lovely Jewish family, the Dee family? And also when it was presented, they just said two sisters in the news, didn't actually refer to the fact that they were both teenagers and the mother killed in cold blood. They were unarmed. And of course it hit our kind of news headlines around Easter, Passover time as well. So how is your community responding to such an absolutely horrific terrorist attack?
Well, first of all, I mean, you watch this on TV and you're just crying. I mean, my son lives in the same community as the Dee family. He didn't know them personally, but he's a teacher in a high school, and he teaches, in that same high school is another member of the Dee family. We're best friends of these girls that were killed. So it's something that permeates that whole school, something he has to deal with. We've been working very closely with the high school in Kiryat Arba, where one of the girls who was murdered was from. What they have to deal with, those children, 16 years old, have to cope with the fact that their close friend, their classmate, is murdered. So there are ripple effects like that at so many levels. I have to say, though, you know, for us, it's going to happen again. It has happened before. You cry, and you look at this Leo Dee and how he responds to this incident with such pain and yet with such faith, and you are filled with inspiration. But this is just life. I don't know any other way to say it. This is part of our life, unfortunately.
So let's have a look and remind ourselves of these horrific events that occurred back in April during the Easter Passover period. And this is the remarkable Rabbi Dee speaking about the horrendous loss, not only of his wife, but also his two teenage daughters.
As Rabbi Leo Dee, the husband and father of 3 terror victims, grieved the loss of his wife, he also chose to be thankful.
On Sunday, I talked about looking at the good. Lucy, I have a choice. I could lament over the next 25 years of marriage that I've lost, but I actually feel blessed to have had 25 years of a beautiful marriage with you.
Tragedy struck when terrorists fired on a car carrying Lucy Dee and their daughters, Maia and Karine, as they headed to a family vacation. Maia and Karine died immediately, while Lucy lived 3 more days.
Lucy had had 2 bullets, one through her brain stem and one lodged at the top of her spine. There was operation, there was reason for hope, but alas, our family of 7 is now a family of 4.
Rabbi Dee praised his wife at her funeral.
Your light has traveled across all of humanity in an instant. You held on so we could honor you individually and give you a unique send-off for a unique soul. A soul that has changed and will continue to change so many lives. May your soul be so bound up in the bond of everlasting life.
As a final tribute, the rabbi donated Lucy's organs to save the lives of others. Doctors transplanted her heart, liver, and kidneys to 4 patients in need. Bellinson Hospital CEO Dr. Eitan Wertheim called organ donation the ultimate gift of life for the recipients. Our hearts break for the Dee family, who suffered an unimaginable loss, and yet, during their darkest hour, they thought about how Lucy could continue to help others by donating her organs so that these individuals can have a renewed sense of life. The Dee family immigrated here from the UK in 2014. Rabbi Dee now sees a greater need to remain and calls on Israelis to unite and the world to support Israel.
If we support the good and reject the evil, then we can all play our part in building a better world.
And he asked everyone to take a symbolic stand.
So make today Dee's Day. Just share a post with an Israeli flag and let the message out. If we differentiate between good and evil, then we can all help make this world a better place. Do it for your soul. Do it for the souls of Maia, Rina, and Lucy Dee. Do it for all of humanity. And do it now. It has never been more urgent.
Israeli security forces remain on high alert against the possibility of more attacks, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed to find the terrorists and hold them accountable. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
I don't think any of us can even begin to comprehend what it must like for Rabbi Dee and the loss of his two daughters and his wife. Absolutely shocking. This is why it's imperative that not only we keep Israel in our prayers, but we also keep those very special Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria in our prayers as well, and show them as much support as we can, because they are pioneers. They are living there in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. So tough and so emotionally difficult to deal with that, but I felt, Sondra, that we had to, because sadly this is the dark side that we have to deal with, that you and your communities face, that horrible threat of terrorism. But there's another threat that you face as well, isn't it? And this is coming from the European Union. This is the focal point of the programme today, and that is the sheer hypocrisy of the international community, the mainstream media outlets, by saying that your communities are obstacles to peace. And yet here we are, we see that the EU is pumping billions of European taxpayers' money into building illegal Palestinian settlements in areas such as Area C, which belongs to Israel, by trying to create a de facto Palestinian state on the ground without ever having to enter into negotiations with Israel, and the Palestinian leadership having to pay their own price for peace. Share with us how outrageous and how full of hypocrisy this is, because there's silence on this issue.
Well, one of the, I would say the core issue here in the hypocrisy is legal. Just take that word legal. So for decades now, we hear on the part of the international community how so-called settlements are illegal, that they are against international law. So first of all, that in and of itself is ridiculous, because, you know, and this is not the time or the place to go into a full, you know, analysis of that. But trust me, these communities are not illegal under international law. However, there were Oslo Accords that were signed, and that's a recognized international document. And all these countries, in Europe, you know, was one of the let's say, proponents of the Oslo Accords, and put their stamp of approval on it. This document is binding, okay? Now, under that document, Arabs have the ability to build, develop as much as they want in areas A or B. And trust me, there is lots of land there that is open and empty, and if they're having a housing crisis or they need more homes for Arabs, there's plenty of space for them to do that in area A and B. In area C, which is the only part of Judea and Samaria that is today under exclusive Israeli control, it is illegal for them. So the irony, of course, and it's not just irony, it's as you said, it's hypocrisy. The European community has no problem violating international law by funding and encouraging the Palestinians to build without the requisite permits in Area C. And then they have the audacity to call our communities, which are completely legal, illegal. And it's like, you know, what's going on here? Is this legal? Is this illegal? And at the end of the day, it's very clear. The Europeans are not interested in what is legal or not legal. They're not interested in what is right or wrong, or what is moral or immoral. They are interested, for whatever reason, in supporting the Palestinians. And they don't care about Israel, and they may well hate the Israel. I don't know. But they have really taken sides in a very illegal and immoral way.
And how is the Israeli government responding to this? Because when I was in Israel back in 2019, this is the question that I was asked. Do I want to give a question to the Prime Minister then, Benjamin Netanyahu? And this is the direct issue that I wanted to raise with him. Funny enough, once I said what I was saying, was given an opportunity to ask that question. But share with us what the Israeli government is doing, because this essentially means that the European Union is in league with the Palestinian Authority to create a de facto Palestinian state on the ground, and bypasses the negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians for a final settlement or an outcome, which effectively means that they are building a Palestinian state on Israeli territory.
Well, unfortunately, the Israeli government is not doing much of anything. the civil administration that is supposed to be responsible for this, and for years under Netanyahu's government, which is, he declares a right-wing government and very in favor of promoting Jewish presence in Judea and Samaria, has done absolutely nothing to stop this. And went even so far as there's one such area, Khan al-Ahmar, which is located very close to Ma'ale Adumim, which the Supreme Court of Israel, which is usually fairly left-wing, ruled that it is illegal. This was a European-funded community, Palestinians, that is illegally there on territory it has no right to build. And the Supreme Court of Israel has said it needs to come down. And it is the government of Israel, including very recently under Netanyahu, that has appealed to the court, give us more time. We're trying to see if we can reach an agreement so we don't have to take it down. And I look at that and I say, what is going on here? So it is a source of frustration for all of us. The one good thing I can say is that at the same time, there's a number of communities, Jewish communities, that have been initiated that are in vital strategic areas that the government has given some degree of approval to, but has withheld final approval for political reasons. Netanyahu promised several times over the last few years that he was going to complete the legalization process, and he has finally kept to his word on 9 of those communities. So maybe he's throwing us a bone, I don't know, but I do feel that the Israeli government must step up, both on this issue of illegal Palestinian building in Area C, and to ensure that the Jewish communities can go forward as they should be.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at this excellent CBN News report, really highlighting the dangers of the EU funding and building illegal Palestinian settlements in an area of Israel known as Area C.
Israel's Supreme Court approved the evacuation and demolition of Khan al-Ahmar settlement in 2018. Although successive Israeli governments didn't take action, Netanyahu is now being challenged to do so.
We are here because this is our land. When it comes to illegal building in Judea and Samaria, you cannot have double standards. We saw what happened last Friday when the authorities evacuated Jewish community that was built illegally.
Khan al-Ahmar behind me is one of 80 settlements built in an area called E1 along Israel's main highway between Jerusalem and the Dead Sea. Israel says they're illegal because they're built by Palestinians with European Union money on Israeli land.
It's not just about Khan al-Ahmar, it's about the future of Judea and Samaria and the future of our ability to have a rule of law here in Judea and Samaria.
Likud Knesset members Danny Danone and Yuli Edelstein visited E1 overlooking Khan al-Ahmar. They hope Netanyahu will evacuate it, setting a precedent for the removal of dozens of other illegal Palestinian settlements in biblical Judea and Samaria.
Strategically, this area is very important and sensitive. For us, it is the bridge between Jerusalem to the Dead Sea. That's why the Palestinian Authority is putting so much energy, so much money.
The 1993 Oslo Accords designate areas in the West Bank called A and B under some degree of Palestinian control. Khan al-Ahmar is in Area C under complete Israeli control. Meir Deutsch runs Regavim, a group dedicated to preventing illegal seizure of state land in Area C in what they consider biblical Judea and Samaria.
The black is where the Palestinians have been building. Within areas A and B, you see that 70% of areas A and B, again, under full Palestinian control, 70% of the land is not occupied.
Israel has already allocated other land for the people of Khan al-Ahmar to live on near Jerusalem.
The settlers of Khan al-Ahmar are interested, and we have it on tape, they are interested in moving to these legal plots. But the Palestinian Authority is not allowing them to move because the Palestinian Authority wants them to stay exactly over here, as I said, in the strategic place.
Palestinian protesters told journalists otherwise.
Why to move? This is the land for me as an indigenous Palestinian.
By taking this area, this land here, they just cut off the West Bank with the south from the north. This is part of the plans destroying any possibility for a Palestinian state. So this is a Palestinian land. Israel is dealing with it as an Israeli land. It's not an Israeli land.
It's also about the involvement of the European Union, which leads to more complications.
The EU is very involved here in funding the illegal building here.
The EU is supplying them with illegal structures and with illegal electricity infrastructure such as generators.
No European country can decide that they will construct illegally schools or kindergartens and then will protest the possible evacuation.
And as outside influence into the battle over the land of Israel continues, so do the internal struggles in Netanyahu's government. Julie Stahl, CBN News, overlooking Khan al-Ahmar in the hills of Judea.
You can see it for yourself, the complete and sheer hypocrisy of the European Union, of the international community, of our mainstream media outlets. Where is the news reports on this? Where is the international condemnation? Where is the condemnation to saying that these are illegal under international law, in which they are? I mean, I'm so pleased that you've been able to talk through and we've been able to discuss this issue, but sadly we've only got a couple of minutes left of the programme, Sonia. Sondra could easily do another programme with you, but for our viewers watching, how can they get behind and support you and your wonderful communities? And also, I believe you have an exciting biblical tour of Israel, including Judea and Samaria, coming up in October.
Right. So first of all, I want to invite everybody to join. You know, if you have the ability to come to Israel this October, it's really an ideal tour. It is wonderful for first-timers. It has all the sites you need to see, Jerusalem and the Galilee, but it also has real serious time in Judea and Samaria. So whether you've been on a tour before, this will give you things you've never done or seen before, or whether it's your first time in Israel, this is a fabulous tour. And I will meet you there. So I will really be able to host you just like I promised. But really, if you're not able to come to Israel and you want to get involved, please check us out on our website. You can support our work. It's a real blessing. Every one of you out there who is supporting Jewish settlement in the heart of biblical Israel, you are literally taking part in the fulfillment of prophecy, and you can do that through CFOIC.
Sondra, thank you so much for being my special guest on today's Middle East Report, and I want to thank you for watching this program at home. I believe it's absolutely imperative and essential that as Christians we support the Jewish communities living in Judea and Samaria, known as the biblical heartland of Israel, in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Continue to keep them in your prayers, support them, but also go and visit them and show them your love and support. So thank you for watching this week's edition of the Middle East Report.